Hey, Jody here. I visited my friend Mike Zanconato recently up in Sutton, Massachusetts. Mike's a custom bike builder, and now he's gotten into building titanium bikes. It's Zanconato Custom Cycles. And so he let me come visit his shop and kind of shadow him as he worked through some of the stuff that he goes through in building a titanium bike frame. So we're going to look at tube notching and the fixturing that he uses to do that with. We'll look at the fixturing that he uses to purge the bike with, the kind of cups that you use for doing such a thing, purge equipment, like a multi-flow meter setup on the wall that's hard piped in. After the welding was done, Mike and I sat down and just talked titanium, some of the things that we've learned over the years. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it. A lot of operations go into making a bike, so this is a little lathe work on the head tube. And also going to do a little notching of tubes using a special fixture made by Anvil Bikes for getting the right angle. This is a Starrett fast cut bimetal hole saw. I'm mentioning that because I made a quick post on Instagram. A lot of people ask what were the best type of hole saws for cutting titanium and even other materials. So these apparently hold up really well. Now this is the fixture from Anvil Bikes, and it's really very adjustable, works really well. You got to cut all kinds of different angles. I learned that, and it depends on the customer on the angles you're cutting. This little mechanism that I'm showing right here that's next to Mike's arm there, that holds different size bushings for different size tubes, but that's to clock. What I mean by clock is that the two copes can't be rotated. They have to be in alignment with each other, and so that holds them just like they need to be. So that's a coped tube. It's got burrs on it. It needs to be deburred. We'll talk about that at length in the end. Usually a file and a belt sander takes care of the burrs. This is the fixture for alignment and purging and tack welding and everything. Another very adjustable fixture. I think this one's from Anvil Bikes as well. And from my perspective, you can invest a lot of money to become a bike builder, but these fixtures are invaluable. So Mike is taking a lot of care, paying attention to getting really good fit ups, and I'll show you some of them here. You know, that's a pretty good fit up. But these tubes are about 0.35, 35 thousandths thick. That's about just a little over 0.8 millimeters. And so a little whisper of a gap sometimes can peel out with you. So that's why it's common to do two passes on some of these joints. If you have any gap at all, it might tend to curl out. And keeping a rod in your hand and filling those little areas in, or maybe making a really low heat first pass sometimes is the way to go. So Mike is cleaning here with a brand new clean, dedicated for titanium, fine bristle brush, stainless steel. These are bronze heat sinks, internal heat sinks, little wedges there, sort of like a muffler expansion tool or a tailpipe expansion tool, but they provide pressure internally. Not only do they keep the part kind of round, keep it from egg shaping while welding, but also draw a lot of heat out of it, and that helps distortion as well as discoloration. So a final wipe down with reagent grade acetone will get rid of any residual oils or anything like that. You need a bigger cup typically for welding titanium. This is a Furick BBW. That's a number 16. That means it's an inch. Now I have these at weldmonger.com as well as the ceramic version of this. The ceramic is definitely tougher, so if you drop this it might break. In fact, it's likely to break, but it sure is awesome to be able to look through it and see the puddle in certain cases. This is one I'm going to be using today. I kind of like to use the ceramic normally.
So what I like to have is one for the machine, one for my primary backup gas, and then this third one is kind of more secondary if I have like a backup purge device like this. But this primary one will go to the heat sinks that are inside the frame, and then the secondary one gives me the opportunity to have multiple, because I have one go to each dropout, so there's two. Then I might be using like a backup box like this, so it just gives me some flexibility.
Okay.
Yep.
This piece is tacked up now, and it's got a nice purge on it. You notice that the tacks are nice and small and silver. So that's about to stick out, sometimes a lot longer than that, but you don't want to stick out necessarily further than you need to. So we're going to do a fusion pass to start with, but that doesn't mean you're not going to have a rod in your hand just in case. So this is just a low amperage fusion pass, and if it looks like it's going to open up, Mike will add a little dab of rod here and there. We'll do a fusion pass all the way around to lock everything in place and seal everything up before we come back over with a second pass. Occasionally there's a little bitty gap. It's just wise to go ahead and start adding rod on those little areas. Nice and silver, we're in good shape. Sometimes it helps to use pulse, and this is 50 pulses a second, 30% background, and 30% pulse time. And sometimes that actually helps when there's a little bit of a gap. That and keeping the rod in there pretty often. So whatever it takes for that first pass, just get it in there, and then coming over that, usually no pulse is required after that, and it goes in nice and smooth. So this wire diameter could be 0.30, could be 0.40, could be as much as probably 1/16 diameter. That's a personal preference thing. Okay, when that torch angle gets out of hand, then stop, let the post flow run, readjust the torch angle to a more straight in angle, and then all you have to do is just kind of light up where you left off, increase and grow that puddle to match the size of where you left off, and then carry on. A lot more post flow is used on titanium. I mean, anywhere from probably 15 as much as 30 seconds, sometimes even more, for keeping it silver. And you can use pulse for a second pass too. We did a little experimenting with that, and it turns out fine. It's just that it seemed to be not necessary. No pulse seemed to be more fun on that second pass. Incidentally, this is the TIGFINGER XL version, and Mike uses a separate clean one dedicated for titanium for his titanium bikes. He's very particular about contamination, even not using dirty gloves or a dirty TIGFINGER, either one. So a restart is pretty easy on titanium, and that's a good thing because there are a lot of stops and starts going around a tube like this. When you're tungsten, you can't always rotate your torch and keep it still and keep the tip of that electrode out of the puddle. Fortunately, you can stop, reposition, get your angle right, and move on without hardly being able to tell where the restart is. So the cup is doing a great job here. It's keeping everything nice and silver at about 30 to 35 CFH of argon. Now this is a mock-up we're doing here. The tubes you saw in the fixture, those will be welded later, but in the interest of time, we just mocked up a couple of joints here just to give you the gist of what goes on into making a titanium weld and to keeping it silver like this. You sort of tackled titanium not too long ago, or entered into the titanium world not too long ago.
Right. I'm relatively new to it, and I knew that going into it, the competition the bar is pretty high, so I knew that I needed to be as well prepared as possible.
You mentioned earlier that you worked for a titanium bike building company?
I did, yep.
And so you would see failures from time to time.
And it was really infrequent, but just talking to other people in the industry and then some of my experience there, what I've found was that certainly internal purging, and those types of failures are the characteristics of that are pretty known. If you saw a crack right down a weld, you knew that there was something going on
with the purge
inside, right? But other areas that might not be as come to mind right away are making sure that you get your burrs off the inside of your copes. Essentially you want everything as smooth as possible. So using a deburring tool, but being very careful not to score the inside of the tube with that deburring tool. If you can make everything as burr-free and as smooth without any sharp corners, file marks, anything along those lines that could be a stress riser, I think is really important.
So avoid stress risers by blending and radiusing and where you can. Make sure you got to pay real close attention to the purge. You've got to have a good purge.
Absolutely.
Typically 2 passes.
I do. So in the cycling world, a lot of the manufacturers talk about a 2-pass weld as being superior. I just think it's the way to get it done. I think it's important to get really good root penetration. Make sure you're consuming that tube corner and blending it into the tube that it's butting up against. I think that's really important. And then you can do that at lower amperage, so you're getting that fusion at low amps and low heat. The other thing that I think is important with that, again at low heat, you're creating a seal. So we are purging inside, and anywhere that you can eliminate a potential gap, I think that only helps your internal purge.
That's true.
So you're creating that seal at a much lower temperature, and you're also getting the root penetration that you need.
It makes sense, because on that first pass, if you can go lower amperage, you're much less likely to nip through.
Right.
Then it seals it up. Now it got time now to purge more, and then you come across with a second pass, and overall heat input I think could be less on 2 passes.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that I find frustrating is, there's a lot of marketing in the cycling world that says 2 passes better, but they don't really explain why.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important for the consumer to know that in the hands of a skilled fabricator, it can be done with 1 pass.
Oh, sure.
And I think it's important for the customer to do their due diligence and ask the questions. Why is that better?
Yeah. Titanium does have a tendency to be able to bridge over and leave lack of fusion in a fillet weld.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely that tendency there, so maybe that's it, just to avoid that. But you can certainly get 100% fusion with 1 pass.
Yep.
And it'd be a good sound weld.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially if the fit up's good.
Right, and that's critical, especially for in our world. We're measuring alignment, in the thousandths of an inch. So any gap that's going to close is going to throw off alignment more than if you had really good fit. And then the other thing I would add is, it's the small details. And I wish I could remember who pointed me to the YouTube video, but it was an MIT lecture, and they were talking about prep at GE Aircraft Engines in Lynn, and they were having some issues, and the recommendation was always there to use reagent grade acetone, not your average hardware acetone. And when they made that switch, it cleared up any issues that they had. And I can say for me, what it helped go from was kind of that light straw to dark straw, down to silver into maybe some light straw.
Yeah, I want to camp out on that for a second, because just to make sure everybody understood what Mike said, everybody wants the perfectly silver weld, and sometimes you could chase your tail and you'd be getting a little straw or brown in the heat affected zone, and you're thinking your argon flow is not right or whatever, and all it is there's some residue of something on the surface that's causing that discoloration. Using reagent grade acetone has, it's very controlled, like almost no water in it, or there's no oils or anything like that. So when it evaporates, you got a pristine surface, and that's a big thing in getting that look of a nice silver titanium weld. And of course, that's secondary to the fact that you're just not cooking any impurities into the grains.
And that's sure.
Yeah.
And you could even do a test on your own if you got a piece of glass and you put some hardware store acetone and let it dry and hold it up to the light. Sometimes you can see a oil film, and you won't get that with the reagent grade acetone.
Yeah, it's expensive, but
it is. But
so is titanium. So is titanium.
Exactly. Right.
Purge is paramount. Cleanliness, deburring, removing all sharp edges. You mentioned even you had seen a failure or two that initiated from a breather hole that was drilled that maybe wasn't deburred smoothly enough or something.
Yeah.
So that was a sharp corner. That's a stress riser.
Yeah.
And so get rid of any sharp edges. Of course, you want to use an oversized cup. How oversized depends on a lot of things. Chill factor being one of them. All right. So we showed some chill blocks, internal chill blocks, in those little wedge pieces that are those copper or bronze. Bronze. very conductive, pull the heat out. So, how much shielding you need, a lot of it depends on the chill factor, how quickly that heat can dissipate. When that argon envelope moves over the weld, if it's cooling off adequately, you can have a silver weld with a lot smaller cup if you have chill blocks. So, good deal. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. First up is this steel DIY welded hell hook. Hell is short for helmet. It holds a helmet on your gas cylinder along with purge hose, wrench, anything else you want. This is a DIY steel kit, 3/16 inch thick. Takes about 3 or 4 minutes to put together, and then it's good to go for a lifetime. I use silicon bronze on this. I like silicon bronze for jobs like this where full strength isn't needed, just a quick something to hold it in place. Got kind of a tab and slot design, so it doesn't take much. Helmet, wrench, purge hose, whatever you want. Both plastic and steel versions available now at weldmonger.com. I also recently added a product called a MagTab Jumbo. Previously I'd sold a small MagTab, and I'll show you both products here, but the small MagTab is just so convenient for welding little small tabs and gussets like this. You could hold it with your fingers and get a quick tack on there, but this is so much easier, so much better. There's never a miss, never wire pushing out of your MIG gun and knocking your gusset off place. Just a really super quick, easy way to locate small tabs. And I've found lots of other uses for this thing as well. In addition to welding tabs like this that might hold a wiring harness or anything like that, also you can just take it apart and use the swivel V-pad portion of it for doing an outside corner joint like this. Just a really quick, nice way of holding it corner to corner to get tacks on it. You can use multiple ones for bigger parts. The Jumbo MagTab just got way stronger magnets. It's virtually pretty much the same design, but the magnets are much stronger, so it'll hold much bigger pieces. Here I'm holding a 3-inch quarter-inch wall piece of tubing or pipe. Got no trouble holding that up. This is a piece of steel that's 1 inch thick. Probably weighs close to 20 pounds. Picks it up easily. It's rated for actually a good bit more than that. Magnets are just way stronger. I also added a dual flow meter from Flametech. This is a nice, affordable flow meter where if you need a purge on things like sanitary tubing, stainless steel, titanium, this is a really affordable way to get it. Here I'm just going to show the results welding an outside corner joint with and without a purge, just to show the difference in case you're not aware. Stainless steel, if you don't have an argon backing, it can sugar like this, and that traps bacteria and all kinds of bad things like that for food service applications, so a purge is way better. Let me show you now the usefulness of my TIG Finger product as well as a TIG Finger XL. This is some aluminum tread plate, and for a long run like this, it's kind of hard to find a prop to go a really long way without stopping. And so on a long outside corner joint like this, especially on aluminum or any kind of joint, that stuff gets hot pretty quick. It's hard to lightly drag your pinky of a glove without it getting smoking hot. And this just glides along really nicely. You can imagine how hot this would get. This is a big piece of stainless steel. I'm welding this up around probably 175 amps or so. And I'm just hanging in there as long as I need to with the TIG Finger, and my finger's not even getting warm. This product is 100% sourced and made in USA from USA Materials, and it's made by friends and family. Now there are knockoffs out there, and that's a shame, but they're not made in USA and they're not as good. This is TIG Finger XL. It's just thicker than the regular TIG Finger, and 2 fingers usually can fit in it unless you have extremely large fingers. But for a socket weld like this, sometimes you want to come in from the top, sometimes you can't walk the cup because things are in the way. It just gives you a place to prop on hot metal without your fingers screaming. Sometimes there's a place to prop, but sometimes there's not, so it's great to have a prop in your pocket. Up next is the Furick number 8 Pro. This is a really good little cup for a number 8 gas lens. Provides a lot of good shielding, and it also kind of lights the way. That's the benefit I find with these clear cups. Not only can you see through them sometimes down in a hole, but you can also just see better all the way around because it's kind of a light bulb lighting the way ahead of you, and it helps you to see the seam or the joint or the edge that you're welding just a little bit better. Okay, this is a joint done with using pulse, high-speed pulse. The ceramic version of the number 12 shields every bit as good. You just don't see through it. It's much more durable though. I kind of prefer it for that reason. Provides great shielding with a long stick out if you need it. The BBW is a little bit bigger. This is a 16/16, so 1 inch inside diameter cup. These are designed to be used with 332 electrodes, and the cool thing about them is they're threaded, so they'll either work with this adapter kit by removing the O-ring, or they'll work with the hardware in a stubby gas lens kit. They just screw right on and no O-ring required. So I did this video not too long ago of a titanium joint. I was using the dual flow meter as well as the ceramic BBW cup, providing really good shielding once I got my argon issue straightened out. Turns out I just had a bad tank of gas, but the cup was not at fault. The cup was keeping it. It's titanium, nice and silver, which is what you want for titanium. Also works great on super alloys and stainless steel. Here's the Furick BBW clear cup. I used this shooting some video recently with a friend of mine who builds titanium bikes. Did a great